Thank you, Tara. It's a big venture for me. I've enjoyed the last year and a half being retired and acting fully retired. Now I got to go back to work. But pasture really isn't work. It's a fun time and a rewarding time. Tim asked me to talk tonight about our trip to New Zealand, February of 2016. Some of the people here tonight were on that trip, and I'm going to give kind of a quick summary of what we saw, and also a little bit about New Zealand. I find it a very intriguing place. We set off, 28 of us. We had 21 hours of flights. We started at about, I think, 7 o'clock out of Toronto Airport, and we got into Queenstown, New Zealand, which is in the South Island, just after lunch, a day later. It was about 21 hours of flying time. So you're literally going to the other side of the world and then going to the southern hemisphere. And it's a country that has 2 islands, which you're likely well aware of. It's about the size of Great Britain or Japan, or more locally, it's twice the size of southern Ontario. So think of southern Ontario and our land area, and New Zealand basically is double that. If you want to think in terms of distances, it's about 1,600 kilometers north to south, and in latitude that relates to Atlanta, Georgia to Sudbury, Ontario. So, or Toronto to Winnipeg, but if you take the Atlanta, Georgia aspect, that covers a lot of the climate that's involved, with the south end of New Zealand being comparable to Sudbury, although it's not quite that bad. They only have about 4 months of winter in southern New Zealand. I think Sudbury has a wee bit more, don't they, Barry? 2.5? Okay. The Southern Alps run up through the South Island on the west side, and they're a pretty substantial mountain range. The highest is Mount Cook at 12,300 feet, so a pretty significant mountain. And that runs up the backbone of the South Island on the west side. When you get to the North Island, there's a range of volcanic mountains in the center of the island. The agricultural land is then in the South Island, east of the mountains, and in the south and the north it's fairly rolling, and you have the Canterbury Plain in the middle, which has been a cropping area, but more and more dairy cattle moving in there. The North Island has agriculture on either side of this volcanic range. So that gives you a little bit of the geography. Population-wise, there's about 4.8 million people in New Zealand. They have 14.4 million acres of agricultural land, of which 7.9 million hectares, is in grassland. So over half the agricultural land is grassland. 2.7 million is in rough grazing land, and when they say rough, they mean really rough, very steep, hilly, rugged country. There's only about 470,000 acres of grain land, grain, seed, and fodder land, 125,000 acres of horticulture, and about 1.6 million acres of radiata pine, which is a pine tree. Ones we saw were about the size of the spruce tree straight in front of me, about 3 times as high, with about a 60-foot log in it. Pretty impressive, and they've been planted in plantations. So on this land, remember it's twice the size of southern Ontario. They've got 12,000 dairy farms with 6.4 million dairy cattle, about 4.5 million milk cows. We've got about 250,000 dairy cows in Ontario on just under 4,000 farms. There's 7,680 sheep farms, plus another 6,000 that have beef or grain as well as sheep. 11,000 beef farms with 1 million cows. We've got about 275,000 cows in Ontario and 3.7 million beef cattle. Grain farms, there's only 3,500 grain farms, and that includes 1,000 that have livestock, either beef, sheep, or dairy. And then they have 1,100 deer farms with 1 million deer. So I've given you a lot of numbers, but what I wanted you to envision is mostly grassland, using livestock to convert that grass into either meat production. That's Fonterra. It's a cooperative, and we saw a number of milk plants in our travels, huge milk plants processing the milk into different components. In their export business, they've had a couple of bumps in the road. New Zealand was exporting everything basically to Britain until Britain joined the EU. That ended the British market for the New Zealanders, and from the meat processing standpoint, the British just walked away. And so the meat processing plants, which they call the works, became cooperatives, and they processed the meat and market it from there. So we visited a number of farms. The first one we visited was basically a deer farm. Very high level of management. It was 2/3 of the way down the South Island, so fairly well to the south. They ran about 1,500 deer. They had land that was very high, rocky and dry, and that's where these 1,500 does were running and where they had their fawns. And when the fawns were about 28 kilograms in size, they brought them down to the lower land, weaned them, and they raised those fawns to about 93 kilograms in weight. The highland was really rough, dry. The lowland was all irrigated, and they were on perennial ryegrass and white clover pastures. Very intensive rotational, so moving every day to a fresh piece of grass, water in every paddock, and irrigation in nearly all of the paddocks. And they were putting on about 1.5 inches of water every week on those paddocks to keep the growth going. They also were growing some annuals, and we saw this on each farm we visited. They were using turnips, kale, some of the other brassicas to supplement summer feed and give them high energy feed for finishing the animals off for market. This farm at Kreifel Station, 1,850 hectares of land, and as I said, 1,500 deer, females, and then all the fawns. The extra grass that they had, and they had extra grass, they bought lambs to fatten on grass, and they also custom raised some dairy heifers. And what really struck me as an interesting aspect in their management, they had figured out what each enterprise was giving them per kilogram of dry matter. That's really the first time I've heard a producer talk about how many cents per kilogram are we getting for our dry matter. And with their sheep operation, they were getting 23 cents per kilogram of dry matter that they were producing. With their dairy heifers that they were custom rearing, they were getting 26 cents. And for their deer operation, they were getting 32 cents per kilogram of dry matter. So they were looking at what are we producing and what are we getting for it, and then realizing it was the grass that was the production. So that was the first farm, lots of irrigation. The second farm we went to was Donna and Hamish McFarland near Christchurch. And this was a grain farm, 750 hectares, all of it irrigated. The highlight there was they had 110 hectares of black currants that were being grown for juice. And then they also raised tall fescue for seed, potatoes, carrots, winter barley, and some fodder beet, which we really know as a mango. They were growing fodder beet, and depending on the market, they either pulled the fodder beet and sold them to somebody to feed the livestock, or they bought livestock and brought them in to eat the fodder beet. Everything was irrigated, and their water was 7 to 9 meters down, so punch a well in, 7 to 90 rather meters, and pump water for irrigation. And while we were there, we saw some, in that area, we went into Christchurch and saw some of the damage from the earthquake they had 5 years ago. They're still busy rebuilding, and Christchurch Cathedral is still just propped up. Pretty devastating what happened. Went to another beef farm this time, T-Mana Angus. They ran 700 cows. They were north of Christchurch, so we're about 3/4 of the way up the South Island on the Pacific side or the east side. Beautiful spot looking out over the Pacific Ocean. And they had 700 cows, sold about 160 bulls as breeding stock. They were hoping that their bull sale would average $6,000 a piece on the bulls, so pretty high quality. In their system, they had 220 paddocks that they were managing, up to 14 kilometers away from the home base, and they got there and back by walking the cattle. They weren't trucking them anywhere within that farm system. They could walk them and get them back. Even in one case, they walked them down on the beach of the Pacific Ocean to get them around a big hill. They were growing, again like the other places, turnips, kale, Persian clover as annuals to supplement their perennial pastures. And we saw them, they were ready to seed down one small field. It was up on a hill, and they were going to use a bulldozer to pull the cedar. And it looked like maybe they were even, from our perspective, pretty high risk at a bulldozer on that steep a slope. But that was, important to get feed there for grazing later on. Then we went from there over to the North Island. It's a 3-hour ferry ride across the strait, Cook Strait, to get to the North Island. And we went to the Fielding Auction Mart. And I found that quite interesting. There were 25,000 sheep there the day that we were visiting, along with about 1,500 cattle. The sheep were in pens of 150 to 500, and the auctioneers just moved through the pens and sold them. If you only wanted half a pen, you could buy half a pen. And it was gate run. The first 250 out of the pen were yours, and the 250 that didn't know enough to go through the gate belonged to the next guy. But a pretty interesting market. The cattle were 400 to 500 kilogram dairy cross bulls. Pretty well everything we saw were bulls in that 400, 500 kilogram range. And there was one sales ring, 2 commission firms, each with their shirt color, and they just alternated depending on whose cattle came through the ring. They just took turns selling them. So a little different than what we see here. And all those cattle were tracked with an RFID system from when they came into the yards, as they moved through the yards and back out. Another farm we visited was Greenlink Farms. They had Charolais sheep, and just by coincidence, Wagyu cattle. So I think that might explain why we had that stop. Might it, Tim? Maybe. This fella didn't have any irrigation, so he was really struggling. It was dry when we were there, and he had fattening lambs on a mix of annuals, and the regrowth was so slow that he was about 1/3 of his normal stocking rate on those pastures where he was growing and fattening the lambs, just because of the dry conditions they were dealing with. And he had quite an interesting operation. He was looking at direct marketing under the Green Lake Farm name. And then the last farm we visited was Gibbs Dairy. It was a 260 cow Jersey dairy farm. A little bit smaller than average. The average dairy farm is 360 cows in New Zealand, with as many as 10,000 cows on a few of the farms. And there's been a huge expansion in the dairy industry over the last number of years because there was more money in dairy than there was in sheep, so the dairy pushed the sheep out. But when we were there, prices were very low. The price was $4.15 per kilogram of solids for milk, and that was below their cash cost of production. So dairy people were not very happy at that point in time. A lot of them had lost a tremendous amount of equity. On this farm, they were getting pretty good, better than average production from their cows, and a very well-run operation. 84 hectares, which would be about 200 acres. It was all in grass except 16 hectares of corn silage, and they fed the cows basically 80% pasture and then a little bit of corn silage, 2 or 3 kilograms of dry matter from corn silage, and a little bit of cottonseed meal. Their dairy rotation with the 260 cows was 21 to 25 days in early summer, so that was how long it was taking them, the regrowth for them to get back into a paddock. Then in the autumn, they were 28 to 30 days, and their winters were cool, but they still got about 10 kilograms per hectare of growth, and they were on an 80 to 90 day rotation in the winter time. So feeding a fair bit of corn silage, but still grazing during the winter. And this was kind of the middle of the North Island. So very interesting in all of the farms, but very focused on utilizing grass, fence systems, lane systems, water in every paddock. And we saw, driving through the countryside, a lot of cement 6-foot water troughs or 5-foot water troughs in fields. The fences weren't in place at that point, but the water system was there, and that's how they based their system. And if you remember back to the numbers I had at the beginning, a tremendous amount of the area is grassland, and they're using it to their best advantage. So it was an excellent trip. I think everybody on the trip really enjoyed it. We had a great time, saw a lot of things. Tim and Donna make excellent tour guides. Didn't get us into too much trouble. Got us into some special places. I think the highlight likely for everybody on the trip was we had the privilege of meeting Sir William Gallagher and Lady Judy in their home. We spent an evening with them, which I think most people will remember for the rest of their lives that were there. It was an incredible evening. But an excellent trip, and really interesting to see how a country isolated a long ways from anybody else can make it in the export business by keeping their cost of production very low and very